2012, I was combing the internet for new fractal material, and I came across 3D fractals, which I had never seen before, and I was totally intrigued, especially when I found out that the program being used was free. So I downloaded the program and dove in, and I've told people before that I think if somebody had been tasked with creating an art form specifically with my mind in mind, it would look very much like Mandelbulb 3D. I tend to look at the world in a very intellectual, cerebral manner, but I also have a very artistic side. I think I'm very balanced in my left and right brain. So, and I like puzzles. So finding fractal forms is like solving a puzzle. It's like putting all these different pieces together and shaping them. And then that's the cerebral part. And then the artistic part is the color, lighting, texture that really bring it to life. There's actually three types of fractals represented here. The earliest I was working with, this would be one example. I don't want to get too technical with the type of formulas, but it's called escape time formulas. Same with these three on this side. And actually, I think this one too. And that's those are Mandelbulb, the Mandelbulb program. This was done with a program called Apophysis, which is not truly a 3D program. And this was also done with that program. So they're two-dimensional fractal, different look. Every program, I think you'd agree, different program has a different look to it. The ultrafractal fractals are very identifiable. And then I discovered iterated function systems, which you're probably dying to know about.
Yes.
Those iterated function systems are a fairly late branch of mathematics. Came about in the early 80s. And they're basically just forms, like spheres and cubes and spirals and very simple forms. And the way...
Three-dimensional?
Yes, yes. So, you know, you might have a spiral, but the spiral can be stretched out, it can be wide, it can be thick. You have all these different variables that affect these forms, so you can do a lot of different things with them. I was explaining earlier that in this piece, I took the spiral, but I stood it on end, and I put it in the background. So in the mode I work with, where things overlap or even are close, the forms take on the characteristics of surrounding forms. So these ridges here are the result of the spiral in the background that you don't actually see. I also use light maps to add texture. For example, like the texture in this piece. So with the Mandelbulb program, I have the option of using up to 6 lights. And that you could have a global light, which is just overall light, or a spotlight if you want to highlight something, or you can use it as a light map. And a light map can be any image or pattern or anything. So it's a good way of adding texture or color or both.
Paul, can I ask, what's your process of that one?
This one? I was telling Jim earlier. That was an experiment. It was early on, 2014, when I first started working with the iterated function systems. And there's a formula called gear. There's actually 2 formulas for gear, and I thought, why would anybody want a gear
Oh, I love
shape?
gears.
And so I ignored it for a long time. I thought, well, I wonder what I could do with that. And so this was an experiment to see what I could do with the
Love it.
gear form.
When does the color come into
Good question. A lot of people work without color to begin with. I don't know why, but they'll work in a grayscale.
Okay.
But color is such an important part that I start working with color immediately as soon as I start working it. But I do a lot of experimenting with color as the piece is developing. And hopefully by the time I get the fractal, I have the color, hopefully. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes I spend hours after, the fractal will be done, but finding the right palette and textures and lighting and all that can take a while.
What
Does
about-
it get to a kind of intuitive state? Are you always sort of thinking about these formulas and how they interact, or does it get more plastic than that?
I'm always thinking. Because you can change one variable in a formula and it will change everything. So that's like, okay, now I've introduced this and now that has changed this, so what do I do with this? And sometimes I'll change a variable and something really interesting will come up, a texture or something that I really like and say, oh, okay, now how can I bring this out a little more? How can I utilize this? And so that's something I want to keep. So I'll focus on that and work around that.
Do you have to take a lot of notes, or do you remember this stuff?
I don't take notes. And in a way, it's like I'm relearning it every time. But in a way, I think that keeps it fresh. I probably forget
Yeah, I understand.
a whole lot.
And can you
I do
save
too.
the program, can you save that particular rendition before you move on and make any adjustments?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
save a lot. I just checked this morning to see how many I had saved for August, and it was close to 1,100.
These are stages in a
Yes.
piece.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, there's, yeah.
Yes.
And you go back to them sometimes?
Yes. Yeah, because sometimes I find a fractal that I think has just a tremendous amount of potential, and I'll spend days and days working with it, trying to fulfill that potential, and often I don't. I'll eventually, after a week or so, I just say, all right, I give up. And then, maybe a month or two later, or a year later, I'll go back and say,
Find
maybe
out.
I can do something with this now. I'll sort of start over. Yeah. Yeah. Because you might learn something
Sure.
in the meantime.
Learn something. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah. Or sometimes new formulas get introduced, so then you can go back and try a different formula.
I noticed I'm on the Mandelbulb Facebook group.
Yes,
And
Mandelbulb Maniacs.
Yeah. I noticed though once in a while that somebody will publish or share this incoherent bunch
The
of
formula.
characters
Yes.
and dots and numbers and
The
stuff.
parameters. Yes.
So you guys kind of feed each other stuff?
Yeah, the group is very much about sharing. I probably don't share as much as I should, but that's the way a lot of people learn, and that's the way I learned a lot of things. People share the parameters, and then you can take their work and tweak it, and see what you can get out of it. It's a good learning process.
How you decide to display the work? What got you interested in doing it on the metal plates?
Well, when I first started out, I was doing limited edition prints, like these,
Okay.
and usually 25, although that one's 5, this one's 10. I thought that might make them more affordable. I wanted people to be able to afford to buy my work.
Yes.
But I always had them custom framed, because I didn't like, you know, IKEA frames and things like that, which
Yeah.
people were suggesting.
Yeah.
I just, so that got to be a little expensive and made them a little more unaffordable. So then I discovered the aluminum prints, which basically cut my costs in half. So that made things much more affordable. So I started having things printed on aluminum. And then I discovered acrylic face mount prints,
Like this one.
this
right?
one and the one up here, which I love, but those are very pricey. Basically, it's like having something custom framed. But I really like the presentation.
But you have to be more careful of the surface.
Yes.
A lot more careful. Yeah. I know. That and the size.
That's a good question. Usually, I just have a feel for, you know, how I see it.
Okay.
Although, when I had this one done, the very first show, this was a limited edition of 25, but I did one just for me that was more like
Ooh.
this.
And?
This,
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
The
that
bigger
one.
they are, the more detail you can
Oh,
find.
That's right.
Yeah.
The more you
That's
can get
awesome.
Yeah.
of it, you know, get into it. You know.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and that one sold pretty big, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something to be learned there.
Yeah. It's also a matter of cost.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's because a large acrylic face mount print could be close to $1,000.
Just having it done,
Yes, just the printing process.
which has nothing to do with your hours and your expertise or
Yeah.
design or anything.
Yeah.